Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mia Charity. I'm president at the Close Up Foundation. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, Close Up has been around for 50 years. A lot of what folks might know us from would be bringing young people, high school and middle school students to Washington, D.C. for week-long programs where we bring students from different communities and schools together and also do work with teachers for professional development and curriculum development to further their civic education priorities at schools and districts. We started our work with the Deliberative Democracy Lab at Stanford University during the pandemic. And Alice has been a wonderful partner of ours since then. We started with doing some virtual deliberations during Zoom overload period of the pandemic. And that also then led to us changing some of the curriculum pieces that we see on our Washington programs, where we serve about 20,000 students and teachers a year here in Washington, D.C. Started moving a little bit more from debate deliberation. And so those changes were being incorporated into our regular programs. And so heading into 2024, we were talking with Alice about the upcoming election. America in One Room was a project they did in 2016 with adults to look at the critical issues that would be coming up in that election. And we partnered to do that work with young people, first-time voters, going into the November election. So with that, let me stop chatting enough to focus on how to screen share. All right, let's see if I did it right. Can everyone see something? I don't know why I still have a panic attack about screen sharing to this day. Right here on the cover, this is a photo of all of the students that we brought together in July. Like I said, Close Up is most known for these Washington, D.C. programs, but every week we get a different mix of students. And this group that you see right here is a representative sample. And so we have all 50 states represented here. We have all the demographics that you can think of, and we'll get to that in a hot second. But again, Stanford being our primary partner on that, but you'll see from that front cover, we also partnered with USC and the Neely Center, who was very much interested in some of the policy questions around AI and technology, and then also Generation
I have no
Lab, which
idea,
is,
I guess.
oh, sorry, which is a polling firm that
Yeah.
specializes
Yeah.
in working
Yeah.
and highlighting the
Yeah. But it was
voices
like
of
right
young
before
people.
break, which is why I
Mm.
also was like,
Can
let's
anybody
touch
else hear
base
that, or is
about
that me?
this.
We may need to mute whoever it is from.
Sarah, I think.
There we go.
There we go. Perfect. So American One Room, we brought all these first-time voters together in July ahead of the election. It happened to be the weekend of the global transportation airline outage, so that made for a fun arrival day for all of our young people. Close-up programs, we typically work through schools in social studies teachers or after-school programs. And this was a bit more of a wider outreach effort for us. It was a fully funded program. All the students participated at no cost to them. And we ended up, despite that airline travesty going on, with 438 students from all 50 states across the country. And the four deliberation topics that we looked at were healthcare, economy, environment, and democracy in elections. The one other note that I would share with everyone about this particular weekend is that we kicked it off in a historic way with the transportation outage with many of these students who were traveling for the first time. And on the last day of deliberations, um, it was the day that President Biden announced that he would be dropping out of the presidential race. So there was lots of flurry of excitement, surprise, all of those things that students took into those last conversations. But just to give you a little context about those deliberations, each deliberation had about 8 to 10 policy issues that were considered by young people in those conversations, about half of them being conservative leaning and about half of them being more liberal leaning. And then let me go here to the next slide. A little bit more here about all of the students that were part of this. Like I said, everything from rural, urban, every slice and dice of the population to make it a representative sample. That was our goal. So let's go to the next slide. In terms of process, students that participated in the program received the first poll before they got here. Then we started recruiting. All of our materials were reviewed and balanced by an advisory group of university academics, just to make sure we were balanced and going into the election, given the political nature and the landscape, we wanted to be extra careful about making sure that everything felt balanced on this program. While the students were here, they went through, like I said, those 4 deliberations in small group conversations, about 10 to 15 students per deliberation group. And then following the deliberation, students created their own questions about the issues that were discussed that they could ask for clarification or more information from our panel. And then finally, students were able to take that second poll where we compared where they actually started and where they ended in terms of their views after the deliberation exercise. Just to give you a few highlights from the deliberation, obviously I'm preaching to the choir a bit here of why deliberation is important. Obviously, this generation of young people are setting the tone for the future, and hopefully can set a different sense of opportunity to have much more healthy dialogue with people across difference, which we all see across everything that we can read right now. But in general, um, them understanding that people from different backgrounds can sit down together and work through issues, and also help them become more informed citizens. That was validated through the survey data that we found. A couple of other things to note about deliberation in general. There was an overall increased sense of efficacy and respect and satisfaction with democracy. I think, as we would all imagine, once you hear why people think the way they do, you can understand a little bit more of where they're coming from, and that was demonstrated throughout the program. Really quickly, I'll just lead us through some of the other key issues. Certainly strong support for climate issues and climate action. On the economy, some surprising notes about what young people think about raising the minimum wage. That actually dropped. I think if you heard some of the conversations during the deliberations, it was interesting to hear students think about what minimum wage means in smaller communities or rural communities versus urban communities, and where they ended up finding compromise on those issues at the end. Um, Most notable in the healthcare conversation is that there was strong support for patient protection and Affordable Care Act. Even we'll drop a link to the video of student reflections at the end. But interesting, we did have abortion on as one of the policy issues that students considered. And there was this feeling of respectful conversation, even and none of these students knew each other coming into this process. So I think that was probably the piece that we were most nervous about, students discussing on program. But again, everyone felt supported and open to be able to do that in those conversations. Um, Here's a little bit about the social media insights here. One of the things that was notable about social media is that obviously young people don't want a lot of restrictions on that, but some of it, was based in students wanting more understanding that um, when there are limited resources for them, sometimes social media helps connect them in different ways that maybe adults aren't thinking about. Um, so I'll wrap it up now because I know we have lots to go. One of the key finding in the democracy and elections was this increased support for restoring rights for formerly incarcerated peoples. So that was the biggest piece of movement. I would say our big takeaways for Close Up is um, we are working with Stanford to continue to figure out how we scale and provide more opportunities for deliberation in schools to also demonstrate to educators that it is possible to facilitate current issues, conversations, and healthy dialogue in the classroom. And it does work. I think having more of those opportunities can be impactful for young people. When we look at the election, there are certainly half of young people who are going to be happy with the changes, and another half that are not. And it's our hope that we can, regardless of that, create ways to help them feel empowered in what the future looks like and the issues that are challenging in their community. So I will stop there. We'll share links to the impact report and the video of some of the student reflections from that. And I will stop talking. So thank you all for your attention and time.